Republican Senator Josh Hawley, who really fancies himself as a hero of working class Americans, voted for President Donald Trump's massive omnibus bill, which of course gives huge tax breaks that disproportionately benefit the rich, while also cutting funding to programs like Medicaid and food assistance for the poor. But recently, Hawley introduced a bill that would reverse some of those Medicaid cuts, probably knowing full well that there isn't a chance in hell that that bill would pass. So is this a PR stunt, or is he real about passing this legislation? That's the question I want you to ask yourselves as I give you more details. So in order to understand how Hawley flip-flopped on this issue, allegedly, we need to get into this Medicaid provider tax. So bear with me, I know it can get a little complicated. Medicaid is jointly funded by the federal government and states. Remember, Medicaid is run by the states, but it's partially funded by the federal government. States cover the upfront cost of care and then are reimbursed by the federal government for at least 50%. The provider tax is a state-imposed fee on hospitals and other healthcare providers to help fund the state's share of the Medicaid program. So every single state except for Alaska has at least one provider tax. But Trump's budget bill changes how provider taxes can be implemented. So the bill freezes the current provider tax thresholds for all states for 2 years. This is a disaster, by the way, and reduces the allowable level of provider taxes for expansion states by 0.5% each year until it reaches 3.5% in fiscal year 2032. So, oftentimes, and this drives me nuts, when these debates take place about the work requirements, most Americans, I think, not most Americans, but there's a portion of American voters who think yeah, you should, if you're able-bodied, you should be working. You shouldn't be living off government cheese. But the cuts to Medicaid went much deeper than work requirements. And this is exactly what I'm referring to when I talk about, this whole provider tax situation that was baked into the omnibus bill. Now, expansion states refer to states, by the way, that adopted the Affordable Care Act, which expanded the amount of Americans that can qualify for Medicaid and also provided additional federal dollars to states to run their Medicaid programs. Now, Hawley's bill would undo the provider tax moratorium and reduction that was baked into Trump's omnibus bill. Furthermore, Trump's budget includes a rural health transformation fund, thanks to Hawley's efforts. And Hawley's new bill would double its funding from $50 to $100 billion and also extend its lifespan from 5 years to 10 years. Now, I'm gonna get to Hawley's messaging about why he voted for the bill and why he's proposing this legislation now. But before I do, Cenk, what are your thoughts so far?
Okay, look, I gave Hawley a little bit of a chance like you did because he stopped taking corporate PAC money, right? So, and then he introduced some piece of legislation that were actually a little bit populist, and he became a little bit more of an interesting person than the standard corporate robots in Congress. But at the end of the day, he's still a Republican. So what did he do? He cut Medicaid and then did a lot of theatrics around it. Before he cut Medicaid, he's like, I'm really against cutting Medicaid. Now, after cutting Medicaid, you know what he's saying? I'm really against cutting Medicaid. Brother, you already voted. The ship's already sailed, right? So don't tell me you're against cutting Medicaid when you affirmatively voted to butcher Medicaid, butcher it, right? So now you want to bring back a portion of it in this bill. All right, I'll go back, because we're fair, I'll go back to giving you not full credit, but partial credit if you get it passed. If you convince enough Republicans and Democrats to pass the bill. If you don't pass the bill, you get zero credit. Then it's just an advertising campaign. Oh, I'm gonna screw you over, I'm gonna stab you in the back, but I want you to pretend that I'm a populist. No, right now, Josh Hawley has zero credit.
Agreed, and look, at the moment, he could prove me wrong, but at the moment, I do regret ever giving him credit. I think he's full of crap. I think this is a PR stunt. Now, Hawley published an opinion piece in the New York Times saying, don't cut Medicaid.
What a joke, you already cut it.
Yeah, you voted for it, okay? In it, I'm gonna read a few excerpts from what he claims. He says, a noisy contingent of corporatist Republicans, call it the party's Wall Street wing, wants Republicans to build our big, beautiful bill around slashing health insurance for the working poor. But that argument is both morally wrong and politically suicidal, which is why I voted for it. Like, okay, there's more. If Congress cuts funding for Medicaid benefits, Missouri workers and their children will lose their health care and hospitals will close. It's that simple. And that pattern will be replicated in states across the country. Yes, we know, Senator Hawley. People like us have been reporting on that. And in fact, there have been other senators who were worried about the political ramifications of voting yes on this bill, and they voted yes anyway. And I would venture to say he happens to be one of them. Now, Trump himself, he writes, has been crystal clear on this point. Since taking office, he has repeatedly rejected calls for Medicaid benefit cuts. Okay, so now we're doing, we're running interference, running cover for Donald Trump here, because obviously he was lying. He wanted the bill to pass. And he wanted to justify the tax cuts by saying that it's partially paid for, which it isn't, by the way, it's barely paid for. A little fraction of it was paid for by cutting Medicaid to the tune of $1.1 trillion. In the end, this bill is gonna add $3.4 trillion to our already insanely high $37 trillion in federal debt. Again, Hawley voted yes on this. Just the other week, he writes, Trump said, we are doing absolutely nothing to hurt Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security, nothing at all, which is a lie, Josh Hawley, and you know that. In June, Hawley stated, quote, this has been an unhappy episode here in Congress, this effort to cut Medicaid. And I think, frankly, my party needs to do some soul searching. If you want to be a working class party, you've got to deliver for working class people. You cannot take away healthcare from working people. And unless this is changed going forward, that is what will happen in coming years. So I'm going to do everything I can to stop that.
Except vote for
exactly. Look, he knows this bill is going nowhere. He knows it. Republicans are not going to be willing to cross their daddy, Donald Trump, in Congress specifically. These politicians are pathetic. They're cowards. All they care about is themselves, their donors. So he knows once you pass that omnibus bill, you're not going to be able to reverse the damage. And I'm going to go even further. If the next administration happens to be a Democratic administration, I'm willing to bet that they won't reverse the Medicaid cuts. And the reason why I'm saying that is just based on their behavior in previous administrations. I mean, Biden made all these promises about reversing some of the damage of Trump's 2017 tax cuts. He did nothing to push for the passage of those provisions in legislation at all. Oh, I'm gonna raise the corporate tax rate from 21% to 28%. Okay, but Trump cut the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%. So why is your starting bid 28%? Look, I know that some people get real touchy when they hear people like us refer to our current political landscape as a uniparty. But just pay close attention to what their priorities are. Pay attention to what their promises are when they're running and what they actually do when they're voted into power.
Yeah, I don't care if people get touchy. Yeah. Oh, after they took out the Green New Deal part, the Republicans did from Biden's bills, he passed nothing that was progressive. Nothing. You've been had, you've been took if you're a Democrat. And if you're a Republican and you like Josh Hawley and thought he was a populist, you've been had, you've been took. These guys always give to their donors, not complicated at all. I'm gonna read one member here, Beverly on TYT.com, said, Hawley worked with Bernie on some legislation in the past. I had some hope for him too, Anna. You're not alone. This super smart audience we have paying attention to all this, he did. He seemed to be co-sponsoring some positive bills. That's why we gave him credit, and that makes sense, because at the time he was doing the right thing on those particular issues, right? Now, we didn't say, okay, you should trust Hawley from now on. We never say that, right? And why? Because we know things like this are gonna happen. And so, first of all, by the way, be a member at tyt.com/join and you'll be part of the show. Okay, so now Hawley says, it's the Wall Street wing that wants to cut Medicaid. So he cut Medicaid, so I guess Hawley's in the Wall Street wing. That's his language, right? And that editorial was written before they voted on it. So all this tough guy talk and a big splashy New York Times editorial, I'm fighting for Medicaid. And he's like, and our party has to do some soul searching. and then he does every single terrible thing he said the Republican Party was going to do, well then, brother, I guess you should do some soul searching, right?
So look, but I also want to be fair, Cenk, because look, I wouldn't say every single. Okay, there have been specific examples in which he actually went against the Republican Party in his vote. So let me just give you a sense of what he did in regard to medical debt.
Before you do,
yeah,
I meant in this budget, so in this tax bill that they passed. But go ahead.
Okay, so if you guys can remember, there was something wonderful that was done under Biden in specifically the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, right? So last week, unfortunately, this makes me so angry. A federal judge vacated a rule that would have kept Americans' unpaid medical debt off of their credit reports. Because we have a broken healthcare system and you have no choice but to get the healthcare you need if you're sick, okay? And for that to hurt you economically, financially, is just unfair. So that was basically a way of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to protect Americans and their credit reports. Well, the federal judge, again, vacated that rule, and it would have impacted the credit scores of 15 million Americans, okay? So those with medical debt on their credit reports could have received a 20-point boost on average in their credit score, the Bureau said when issuing the rule back in January. Also, the rule was expected to lead to the approval of about 22,000 additional mortgages every year. Now, in fairness to Hawley, the Senate tried to overturn that rule back in March, and Hawley opposed that effort and did vote against it. So that was a good vote for Hawley. But unfortunately, in the end, it made its way through the courts, and a federal judge struck the rule down.
Yeah, so last two comments here. Again, back to our audience, smartest audience in the country. Police the White House writes in on TYT.com. Hawley's facing blowback in his own district. He's proposing this bill because he wants to whitewash his image, knowing full well that it has no chance of passing. I think that right there is the whole story in a nutshell. I think you're exactly right. And finally, even if they add some stuff back, okay, so remember all they're talking about, like, oh, we're gonna get the debt under control, these Democrats, oh, they run up the debt, right? So there's different estimates. Congressional Budget Office has one, other journalism organizations have one, but 3.4 is the lowest I've seen. I've seen as high as $4 trillion. So let's give them the conservative one. So you added 3.4 trillion to the debt. Now, if this bill passes, I'm in favor of it, but it would add more to the debt. So where's the part where you control the debt? I told you, we told you from day one. We've seen this movie 100 times. They don't care about the debt at all. Their only priority is tax cuts. And that's what they did again. That's what they did the first time with Donald Trump. That's what they did with George W. Bush. That's what they did with Ronald Reagan. All the Republican Party ever does is tax cuts for their donors. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.